My name's DC, and you're watching Barside Jive, and I have the honor of sitting next to Bun E. Carlos, famous drummer of Cheap Trick for many, many years.
30-something.
Yeah.
Great to be here, Daryl. Thanks for this.
Thank you, Bun. You're
Ice
awesome.
cold brewski.
It's your favorite. Heineken, right?
Heineken was always our favorite. After we opened for Fleetwood Mac and Mick Fleetwood was drinking it in '75, our beer on the Rider was always past Blue Ribbon until about 1980. Then it got hard to get a hold of, but we were known as the band that put PBR on the Rider.
You've done a lot of interviews, Bud, and have you ever done one sitting at a bar?
Nope. Yes, I have.
He's a good dude, isn't he?
Daryl, I often do them. We would do them at bars in the afternoon at hotels, because there wouldn't be any place else with seats in it and stuff like that. And I did one in Japan TV once where it was a bar scene, and they had Muppets and stuff. It was some variety show, and I said, well, let's serve some drinks, and they were real drinks and stuff like that.
Oh, wow.
And, that was kind of interesting, So yeah, once in a while we do them in a bar.
The Muppets.
Well, the Japanese Muppets. I don't know if they were actual legal Muppets or not.
Only in Japan.
Could have been bootleg Muppets, back in those days.
How did you get involved in playing music in the first place?
Well, as a kid, my older brother and sister bought records, and my sister was kind of a folky, and I remember hearing the Twist by Chubby Checker, and I was like, the hi-hats, I thought that was a real cool sound I heard on there. When I was in grade school, I remember hearing my sister had Return to Sender by Elvis, and I really thought that shuffle was real cool and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So then the Beatles came out and Ed Sullivan. Like, yeah, Mom, I gotta have some drums. I gotta have some drums. And my birthday was in June of '64, and she went down to Ralph Nielsen's House of Music. Rick's dad had a music store on 7th Street, and a guy sold her a whole set of drums. So
wow,
that turned out cool.
So Mom supported you.
Ma did well, yeah. She encouraged me to play any musical instrument I wanted, and she could play anything but the drums, so she was real good.
Oh, awesome. Did she have any rules like you can play the drums all you want, but you've got to do it 3 miles from the house?
Yeah, she probably wished she would have had that rule, Because my little brother practiced too, and I'd be up in the kitchen and over the drums in the basement, I'd be like, man, how can people stand this stuff? This is brutal.
Yeah.
Hearing drummers practice is like as a special punishment for people, because it's tough.
My son Cody, who's now 25, he is a drummer.
Cool.
And so I know all about having a drummer. Yeah, because that kit took up his bedroom.
Oh, yeah.
And oh God.
Well, when they're practicing, they're not as bad. It's the basic just learning curve. The first year is the torture, just the mindless, no beat.
Yeah.
No tempo.
Right.
No sense.
What is it about drumming that guys are attracted to?
I wanted to drum. I liked the sound of drums, and I thought they were cool. And my dad took the family. We went to the new high school on the east side of town. Had a band concert in '63, and I remember they had a thing in the show where they had 3 sets of drums set up, and 3 guys got up and did a thing with a band, and that struck me as being real cool.
Yeah.
And I think from that moment on, it was kind of in the back of my mind, but the Beatles kind of kicked it into gear. It was kind of like, we got to get a band going. Everybody suddenly had to get in a band.
Right.
And so, yeah, people were scrambling, stuff like that,
Right. A lot of guys I know that play bass, they always say that, there were so many guitarists around, they chose the bass or the drums because they would always have a band to play in because those were the, most needed. Yeah,
my first band was 2 guitars and a drummer.
Yeah.
And we did instrumentals. We did about a dozen instrumentals, and that was in junior high school. And then, we got a bass player that summer, kind of morphed into my high school band, which was called the Pagans. And we had a hit record in Rockford in 1967. We did a Beatle tune and a song by them, Van Morrison's band. And
right.
And that was real cool. I went to #1 in Rockford, and they got played on WCFL in Chicago. They had a thing in the morning called the Boss Comparison, and they'd play the same song twice by 2 different artists, and people would call in and vote, and ours beat the Beatles, not because it was any good. Let's get this straight. Not because it was any good. It was because our singer had like a baby voice at that time. He was like 15, and his voice was just changing. So
that's huge.
you know.
Yeah.
So that went good, but you know, we didn't have any way to sell records in Chicago. We didn't have a distributor. We were taking them to the record store, you know, selling them and
Oh,
stuff.
okay.
So
Yeah.
yeah. And we made enough money to buy a PA. You know, that was cool.
Okay, so what band influenced you most as a kid?
You know, the Beatles and the Stones and the Dave Clark Five were like the big three, kind of when I started really getting into it in 1964. You know, because the Beatles, how could they not be? You know, and the Stones, they were cool, and I really liked their songs. And the Dave Clark Five, they had neat songs. They were doing pretty much mostly covers back then, but the drums were featured in all their songs. You know, they always had a big lick in every song.
Right.
And so it was good stuff to drum along with. And my folks had a jukebox in the basement, so I could go behind it with a screwdriver and turn this adjustment in the back, and it had one 18-inch speaker in it, and crank this thing all the way up, and you could play along with it. You know, so
Oh, wow.
it was cool way to practice, you know, and stuff.
Did you have any family members that actually played the drums?
You know, my sister was a folkie, and my older brother and sister bought records and stuff, and so it wasn't a surprise when I wanted to pick up a musical instrument. But when I was 21, my grandma told me, she goes, you know, you're not the first drummer in the family. And I was like, yeah, what do you mean, you know? And he was like, yeah, you know, great grandpa Russ drummed in the Civil War. I was like a fourth generation drummer, and I said, you know, Grandma, I said, how come no one ever told me this, you know? I was like, well, we didn't want to encourage you, you know, like Gene Krupa and all these guys, drummers got a bad reputation, you know, and we had a family business too, a roofing company in town, so everyone, it was always just assumed you'd go into the family business. You know,
Oh, okay.
So
Right.
yeah, drummers weren't the nicest guys, known as the nicest guys in those days. You know, they were the guys that always got in trouble.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. That is awesome. Civil War.
yeah, great grandpa Russ drummed. You know, his kids played. The grandchildren, they played different instruments. You know, my mom played everything but drums. So. And of course, the first thing I asked my grandma after she explained it to me, I said, "Where's the drum?" And
Right.
well, it was in the family house in Dodgeville, Wisconsin, and the big fire in 1870 when the house burned down, all the stuff burned. And
Wouldn't it have been awesome to have that?
oh yeah, Civil War drum would be cool.
Oh, yeah. Your grandfather, too. I mean, that
I would have ruined it by now, but you know, they're real collectible these days.
Yeah.
Civil War.
Becky, you got a fly swat? You got a fly swatter?
Some flies got our number here.
So I'm going to kind of jump ahead a little bit. We may go back and forth, but why do you think that Cheap Trick became such a hit in Japan more so than in America at that time?
The Japanese came to see us, and well, they saw us with Queen in early '77. We did a couple gigs, and they came to see us open for Cheap Trick and Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers opened for the Runaways, and in the Detroit area in the fall of '77, and the Japanese press came to shoot the Runaways, and the CBS International lady Lois Marino came, and she was like, "They really like you guys. You're 4 individual American characters, and they really think that's cool, and they like your records." And the Japanese press that were at the gig, a photographer and an interviewer or whatever, took a bunch of shots and went back to Japan, and things kind of clicked into gear over there. And the second album, which was not a big hit anywhere else in the world, was a hit in Japan. So they kind of latched onto the band, you know, 2 rock star guys and 2 weirdo guys or whatever, you know. That was pretty cool in Japan.
Oh, yeah. Y'all were a big hit.
And Clock Strikes 10 studio version was a hit.
Looking for some action, did it get alright?
So
Right.
kind of set it up for us. And the other big thing was no bands had really toured Japan a lot since 1975, because at Blackmore's Rainbow Show in Sapporo, a girl got crushed when the crowd rushed the stage. So they basically banned concerts in Japan, and the security at concerts in Japan was the federal police, because they don't have local police over there. So yeah, the market was ripe for a band to go in there, a band like us, and
Right.
it had good songs and it looked good to the Japanese.
So did the popularity increase in America after the successes in Japan?
We were on a real slow ascent. We were kind of concerned about being the there he is. You might not see him on there, but there's a winged beast flying around
We're
here.
being attacked
We're
by
gonna get him.
a fly. You might be better at the fly swat than me, because since you're a drummer.
I used to be able to hit flies with a drumstick. I used to be able to get them on a table or a cymbal.
Wow.
Oh yeah, back in the day.
Yeah, well, from what I saw last night, you could do it again.
Anyway, yeah, Japan was pretty wide open for us and ready for us.
You guys were referred to the American Beatles, I know, in Japan. Did that carry over to the United States?
No, not really. We were still an opening act in the States, and we were doing better. The first record came out and didn't do much, except in the Chicago area. And then the second record came out and got a lead review in Rolling Stone. And we opened for Kiss in 1977, and that really introduced us to a lot of America. And so things were looking up. And then Heaven Tonight, that was in the can when we went to Japan. It was just ready to come out. And the label was like, yeah, Surrender, that's going to be the big hit. You guys are going to be on your way, and stuff like that. So that was the big, grand CBS master plan.
Right.
In Japan, they're like, the label over there was splitting into two labels, CBS Sony, and it was going to be Epic Sony and Columbia Sony. They're going to go two different ways, and they decided a great idea would be every time an American band comes over on either of those labels, they do a live album. And the first album each label released on their new imprints would be Live at Budokan. So Dylan for Columbia and Cheap Trick for Epic, and that's how that whole idea came about. And then that's the album that got in the way of the big master plan in America.
What discouragements have you had to deal with over the span of your career thus far?
Oh, crapes! If you start looking back on things that there's all sorts. I mean,
Single out
we
some
should
real
have
significant.
signed a better deal. Should have kept our eyes on this guy who maybe put something in his pocket or maybe didn't. That kind of stuff. Should have taken 6 months off when things got kind of hectic in 1980, and the bass player suddenly wanted to do a solo record and this and that, and things just kind of got weird because we were burned out. And there's all sorts of stuff, if you start looking back on things, what would you have done different? It's like, well, let me make a list, so yeah,
Right.
a bunch of that stuff.
So, any advice to aspiring musicians how to avoid some of those?
If you're doing any business, I'm going to just hold this fly swatter while we talk.
There he is.
Got him.
Look at that!
If we're,
right here on Barside
did.
Jive, Bunny Carlos took out a fly with the fly swatter.
Advice for an up-and-coming artist or
Right.
musician or something would be, and I should have taken more of this advice myself, or the band maybe should have too. Take care of business. Before you sign a contract, don't let some guy go, yeah, it's fine or it's okay. Get some money out of your pocket and pay a lawyer, a contract lawyer, to look at a contract or this and that. And keep your eyes on the business, and make sure everything's pretty fair in a band, because a band's supposed to be a band. It's supposed to be 4 equal guys. So make sure that all 4 of you have the same voice and wherever you need it, type of thing.
Right.
Just be a better band. If you're the Beatles or somebody, you can have a manager that makes a mistake and gives away your merchandise forever or something, But if you're the normal band, you can't do that. That's a lot of money, that kind of thing. So yeah, you got to keep your eyes on the pennies and dimes and stuff like that. And
Right.
we did that pretty good in Cheap Trick. We had a pretty decent business going there, but things could have been better. I mean, how much did we pay for insurance? That kind of stuff. I mean, in the aughts, 10 years ago, we had an accountant. He took the insurance guy into the back room and like almost waterboarded the guy, and knocked our insurance down to about half what we were paying. You know, there's stuff like that. You know?
Yeah.
So yeah, take care of business. So.
Did you ever look over at Robin or Tom and say to yourself, God, I wish I had their hair?
Nah, because they weren't tall like me or Rick.
Yeah.
They look like midgets on the Budokan album cover.
Yeah.
To quote them. No, yeah, they were the good-looking guys in the band, and you know, me and Rick had long hair. Like I had hair like longer than yours when Cheap Trick started, and then age took a hold, you know, and my hairline started moving back, and
Right.
you know, Rick got a haircut and I got a haircut, and we looked better, I guess, because we went and did it. You know, there was no master plan there or anything, but.
Gotcha. November, I understand, is National Drum Month. I was curious what you have planned for the month of November.
I used to go out to the Guitar Center and judge the talent contest, but I haven't heard from them lately. So November National Drum Month, I will spend the month buying and selling drums, probably like I do the other 11 months of the
Is
year.
that right?
You know,
Yeah.
I collect vintage drums, and I buy and swap stuff with people, and I practice every day, so that'll be part of my drum month.
Right,
You know.
right. Yeah, you have Drum Month every month.
Missed him. There he goes. Yeah, it is drum month every month here in Rockford, so yeah, we have a good time. There were guys here last night, you know, I got like 50 drum sets and a couple hundred snare drums. There was a guy here last night, he has 100 drum sets and a couple hundred at least snare drums and stuff like that.
Wow.
So yeah, drummer world, it's a collector's paradise.
Yeah. Well, I want to tell you congratulations on your induction in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. How does that feel?
You know, of course, you never think that's going to happen and stuff like that because it never happened. And then we found out we were nominated, and I remember last December that week it got announced. I told my wife, I said, yeah, you know, Thursday's the big announcement. I said, not that we got to worry about anything, I said, but, you know, I said, I'm sure the phone will be ringing or something will happen or someone will have something to say. And, yeah, I got up that morning and walked in the kitchen, and my wife goes, look at the front page of the paper, you know, and it was like, then the phone started ringing.
Oh, wow.
And I started getting emails, and I'm on Facebook, and suddenly I had about 100 messages, and
Congratulating you.
yeah,
Yeah.
it got real hectic for a few months there.
Yeah.
And, you know,
Yeah.
and it's real neat. I mean,
Oh.
really, our fans were like freaking out and stuff, and people in Rockford had been doing petitions, and they got 10,000 signatures on something that year, and they'd taken it out to Cleveland and plopped it on someone's desk and gone,
wow.
what the hell's wrong with you guys, you know, and stuff like that. So the fans were going nuts. They thought it was the greatest thing since, you know, baked beans or whatever. And it was real cool. You know, it was a lot of fun.
Did you happen to hear from any of the other band members?
You kidding?
No. Okay.
Yeah, I heard immediately. Rick went in the paper and went, yeah, we're going to try and get Dax up there to drum. You know, and I was just like, yeah, here we go. You know, just like Kiss. You know, everyone's going to start pissing and moaning about who's in the Hall of Fame or who's going to play or who's going to do what. And the Hall of Fame pretty much let us know right away. They said 4 guys are getting inducted, 4 guys are playing on stage. We went through this crap with Kiss last year, and we finally told them, forget it, you're not playing, you're too much of a headache, or something along those lines.
Yeah.
And so yeah, we kind of got that sorted out pretty quick. And no, I didn't hear from the guys really. There was some sniping in the press. You know, I responded to Rick's stuff in Rolling Stone. Rick went in Rolling Stone, you know, and said, well, you know, the record company wanted to sign the band when we had 2 drummers, because I'd broken my arm, and for 3 weeks we had 2 drummers. And no, they didn't want to sign the band with 2 drummers. And if you notice, there's not 2 drummers on the first record or anything like that. But so I went in Rolling Stone, and I cracked wise on a couple things, and then the singer called up the office and said he wanted to kill me, you know, and I insulted his daughter, and it got kind of turned into a soap opera and stuff. And then the actual Hall of Fame, we didn't rehearse, you know, we just sound checked for it and stuff like that, but we didn't need to rehearse, you know, not like we didn't know those songs.
Right.
So, yeah, the thing was kind of a soap opera.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, let me tell you, it was sweet to hear you guys play together again. I actually went to a Cheap Trick concert in Dallas several months ago. They played at the Bomb Factory, and Dax was on drums, and they sounded good, and I really enjoyed the show.
Cool.
But when you guys played together again at the Hall of Fame, I mean, it's just the synergy between you guys. It's awesome.
Well, it sounds like more like Cheap Trick because it's the 4 original guys
Right.
or whatever. I mean, Tom wasn't in the band for 6 or 7 years, and when he came back, I remember at some warehouse we set up the gear to just run some stuff down, and we did Big Eyes or something, and it was just like, oh yeah, this feels twice as good as having the last guy on bass, and he was a good bass player, the last guy, John, and stuff like that, and it's like, I hear the Stones without Bill Wyman, and it's like, the cool bass is missing,
Right.
something like that, so, yeah, the Hall of Fame, that was a lot of fun, sound check, yeah, we did, Want You to Want Me, and then Surrender, and then Dream Police, and then Shame, at, camera rehearsals the afternoon, and sound check, when I was like, yeah, oh yeah, I was up there and I'm thinking, yeah, this feels real good, it's great to be on stage rocking it out with Tom and all that. And,
Right.
and then the singer starts speeding up, or this happens, or no one knows what the ending is, or something goofy happens, and it's just like, oh yeah, I forgot about all this crap too, kind of thing. It's like, yeah, it's a nice place to visit, but I'm sure glad I don't live there.
Bittersweet.
Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah, I just was really impressed at the fact that you guys all stood up there. There was no, visible friction. It was just like you guys, sucked it up, got up there and received your award.
Like when we were at sound check, everything. Hey, how you doing? What's going on? And in the dressing room, of course the singer had his own dressing room, but the 3 of us had a dressing room together. And Tom's like, oh, check this out, something he got on the road and
Right.
stuff like that. And we have known each other for 50 years, so it's like, yeah, what's going on, or how's it going, stuff like that, But then, of course, I'm walking down the hall, and someone comes up, and they called you a motherfucker on Howard Stern yesterday morning, and
Oh, God.
someone else comes up, and hey, they call you an asshole, the new Rolling Stone, and stuff like that, and I'm just like, yeah, it's kind of a Cheap Trick tradition, if there's 3 guys in a room, the guy not there gets his ass nailed to the wall.
Yeah.
And that certainly hadn't changed,
Oh, man.
stuff like that, but yeah, there you go.